Hi there. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Arthritis Life podcast, where we share arthritis life stories and tips for thriving with autoimmune arthritis. My name is Cheryl Crow, and I am passionate about helping people navigate real life with arthritis beyond joint pain. I've been living with rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years, and I'm also a mom, occupational therapist, video creator, support group leader, and I created the Room to Thrive self-management program. I am so excited to help you live a more empowered life with arthritis. We're going to cover everything from kitchen life hacks to navigating the healthcare system to coping with friends who just don't get it. Seriously, no topic is going to be off limits on this podcast. My interviewees and I share our honest stories of how chronic illness affects our lives. This includes discussions about mental health, sex, shame, pregnancy, body image, advocacy, self-acceptance, and so much more. You'll hear stories from all ends of the spectrum, from a person who's living in medicated remission from psoriatic arthritis to somebody living with severe mobility restrictions and severe pain from rheumatoid arthritis. You'll hear how people manage their conditions in different ways, like medications, mindfulness, movement, social support, work accommodations, and so much more. You'll also hear from rheumatology experts who just get it. We'll dive deep into the science behind chronic pain and what's the latest evidence for lifestyle changes that can help you thrive with arthritis, including exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress reduction, and more. This is your chance to sit down and chat with a friend who's been there. Ready to figure out how to manage your arthritis life? Let's get started. I'm so excited today to have Gabi Vaquero on the Arthritis Life podcast. Welcome.
Hi.
Sorry, my voice is like a tiny bit scratchy today, but anyway, back to you. So can you let the listeners know, where do you live and what is your relationship to arthritis and, in your case, rare disease?
My name is Gabi. I live in central New Jersey, although I'm in college in Ohio right now. I'm finishing up my senior year of undergrad. So my relationship with arthritis is I've been living with what we're calling psoriatic arthritis / ankylosing spondylitis. It's currently what we're calling it for the last 3 years now. I've also been living with a rare disorder, a movement disorder called palatal pharyngeal laryngeal myoclonus for a little over 6 years now.
Wow. And, I would love to know, well, first of all, for people listening, psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis kind of fall under this umbrella of the umbrella of spondyloarthropathies or spondyloarthritis. So yes, sometimes they're not sure yet which one that you have. But how did you get diagnosed with palatal laryngeal pharyngeal monoclonus? Oh no, I already messed it up. How do you say it?
Myoclonus, it's okay.
Okay, yeah.
Some people call it palatal tremor too. Both terms are pretty well used.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If that's easier. I know it's
Yeah.
like a whole mouthful. Um, so I woke up with a clicking sound in both ears one morning,
Mm.
sophomore year of high school. And it was really loud and it was really affecting like sleep and concentration. Told me I had a cold. I had eustachian tube dysfunction, to take allergy meds until it went away. Didn't go away. I ended up going to like 10 different doctors, and they all told me varying levels of medical gaslighting, that I was making it up and that it was actually not real. And I was just totally being dramatic teenager. Um,
So
and then,
sorry.
yeah, it was interesting. Like when I look back on it, I'm like, how did they like just totally like, how did you say a neurological disorder was allergies in hindsight? I'm just like, doesn't make sense. But one day I was working on an essay and my little sister went and like put her head next to me to like look over my shoulder, and she heard this clicking sound that I had been hearing 24/7 for years. And she's like, Gabby, are you blinking really loudly? And I'm like, no. And then we like figured out that she was hearing it. And from there, I went back to my doctor, who didn't believe that she could hear it. So I ended up putting voice memos on my phone and recording up to my ear and then pressing play in front of him. And then he was like, oh, that's weird. So then I ended up going down a whole rabbit hole. And then I ended up researching myself, figuring out what it was based on my symptoms, and then trying to find a doctor who specialized in that. I ended up going to a doctor at Temple in Philadelphia who had a specialty in that. I'm like, I feel like that way she could tell me one way or the other if this is what I think it is. And then she she did like a scope and she was able to diagnose me in like 10 minutes. She's like, "Oh yeah, this is really obvious." So basically, it can happen essentially, which is what we think is my case. It's a little unclear. Or it can happen like post-stroke symptomatically. I kind of have features of both. So we've said it's probably essential because my brain MRI is good, but with all the other stuff I have going on, who knows? Um, Basically the muscles in your soft palate. So your soft palate is if you put your tongue on the roof of your mouth and move backwards, that soft and squishy part is your soft palate. So the muscles in your soft palate, either the tensor veli palatini or the levator palatini. I have it the levator, which is usually the symptomatic kind. Sorry if I'm getting a little technical. I actually am
No.
in a dysphagia lab and I did
Oh
my
no, and
research capstone.
this is so fascinating. No, I mean, and it's you, there's a saying that patients become experts in their own conditions, right? And so, like, you've learned all these names of the muscles of the human, mouth and neck. And it's actually so, I just know from being an occupational therapist, swallowing and oral motor coordination is extremely complex. It's one of the first things we learn as humans when we come out of, the womb. So anyway, so yeah, this is great.
Yeah. So basically, when one of the muscles in your soft palate, usually the tensor tympani if it's essential, if it's not caused by anything, or the levator palatini if it's symptomatic. I have it in the levator palatini, and then I also have it in like my pharyngeal muscles, so like the back of your throat, like straight back, and then in your larynx, which is like your voice box. So like if
Mhm.
you actually like if I were to like stop talking for a second, you can see my voice box spasming hundreds of times a minute.
Is that what was
So,
causing the clicking?
yes. So
Oh my
basically, it makes
gosh.
this when every time the muscles contract, it's pulling on my eustachian tube, which is the thing that pops when you're on a plane. So it's opening and closing that tube like hundreds of times a minute. Um,
So sorry.
which is just it's more of a nowadays it's more of a nuisance. It can have effects on like swallowing, can have effects on other things. I've been pretty lucky thus far, although I did there's two recommended treatments out there for palatal myoclonus. You can try like anti-seizure medications. Oh, LOL, balloons. Um,
Sorry, Zoom is making, for those watching the video recording, Zoom has recently decided to give like random emotions when people are talking. The other day I was in a meeting with somebody it kept giving the thumbs down emoji. And she was like, I'm not saying anything bad. Sorry. So anyway, continue.
no, I love that it's like, oh, fun.
Yeah.
I tried to do it again and it didn't do it, but like there's two treatment options. You can try like anti-seizure meds, which I tried and they didn't work. Or you can do Botox injections to paralyze the muscle,
Mm,
which Botox injections in the back of your throat are not pleasant. Um,
no.
and I tried that twice and it didn't really help enough. And I had like difficulty swallowing for a couple months after, which senior year of high school, not being able to swallow liquid without a straw was just like not the experience you want to have. But
No.
so now I just kind of live with it because I've done the two treatment options. Um, so it's just part of my life. I kind of forget that people like experience quiet as a thing. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, that's wild.
Wow. I don't know how rare it is to experience this completely randomly, but I have had times where I swallow and I hear a click. I can hear a click,
Mhm.
and sometimes that's why when you're like on the airplane and then you're coming down, like the air pressure is changing, and you chew gum or like swallow, that can help. So maybe that's not, I'm not saying that I have what you have. I'm just saying I'm like trying to think of ways that people listening could like try to empathize or imagine
Mhm.
what that's like. Um, does it feel
It's
similar?
basically it's that it's the same. It's the eustachian tube the same. It's just that you know how your ears pop on an airplane, mine
Yeah.
pop 120 times a minute. kind of a deal,
Wow. That's what I can.
24/7.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And then, so on top of that, so that was you were in senior year of high school when you got that diagnosis. What about the spondyloarthritis? What symptoms did you have and how did that diagnosis process go? If you have ever felt completely lost or utterly alone while trying to navigate real life with rheumatic disease, listen up. I am here for you. I created an educational program to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks. And it's called Room to Thrive. After earning a master's in occupational therapy and completing hundreds of hours of additional training, I created a step-by-step guide to help you truly thrive with rheumatic disease. This is the only program I know of that's designed to improve quality of life for people living with inflammatory, autoimmune forms of arthritis, like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis, Sjogren's disease, and more. During the self-paced lessons, you'll learn how to manage pain and fatigue, cope with stress, navigate relationships, and continue doing the things that matter to you and bring you joy. The goal is really to help you improve your quality of life and learn how to thrive with your rheumatic disease right now, rather than waiting for a distant day when it might be cured or healed. I really created the down-to-earth, practical, heartfelt resource I wish I had had when I was first diagnosed at age 20. If you want even more in-depth support, you can join the 12-week Room to Thrive virtual support group, where you'll be surrounded by people who actually get what you're going through, people who will provide the encouragement, validation, and support that you deserve. Each group is expertly moderated, so you don't have to worry about the kind of misinformation that spreads like wildfire in the free-for-all social media groups. If you're on the fence, don't just take my word for it. Here's what Katie had to say in March 2023. I was lost and overwhelmed with my RA diagnosis. It felt overwhelming to know what to read, what to do, how to spend my energy trying to research on the internet. Room to Thrive did that for me. It's been like getting a crash course in my diagnosis along with a community who gets it. To see all the details, including the dates for the next support groups, go to the link in the show notes or bit.ly/thrive room with a capital T and capital R. You can also just email me anytime at info@myarthritislife.net. And don't delay if you're interested, because each group is capped at 16 people or less in order to make a small, intimate group atmosphere. Thanks so much for your time, and I can't wait to get started with the next groups. And I can't wait for those of you who are interested in the self-paced option to go ahead and join that at any time. Bye-bye for now.
So all through high school, I had weird medical issues. My knees hurt all the time. I was constantly so much more tired than my friends. I was having these random rashes. And my pediatrician was like, something's weird with you. I don't know what, but something's weird. But we kind of were like, let's keep an eye on it. Maybe you have flat feet, so maybe that's why your knees hurt. Oh, you're a little anemic. Maybe that's why. Nothing really concrete. And then freshman year of college, I went on a mock trial trip my spring semester. So mock trial is like basically lawyer cosplay, where you pretend to be a lawyer and you do arguments and you stay up all night prepping.
I've never done it, but it sounds so fun.
Oh no, it is very fun. And I went on a trip where I had not slept for 2 days and ate nothing but McDonald's fries. So clearly the best for your body. I'm being sarcastic, and I woke up the next morning and my fingers, I don't remember which fingers, but these four, I don't know what they're called.
Which part of your fingers?
These four fingers, the bottom joint and then the middle joint.
Oh yeah, the MCP and the PIP, the metacarpal phalangeal and proximal interphalangeal joints. So like knuckles, and then the one between your knuckle and the very last one, the distal one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I woke up and my fingers were super swollen on both sides, and those hurt like so bad. Like it was like totally fine. Next morning, like, I was like, oh, maybe it's something, like maybe I slept wrong on both hands simultaneously. And I took some ibuprofen. Didn't get better. After a week or two, I called my pediatrician from college, and she's like, nope, not normal. Let's go get blood work. And like my CRP was super high. So I did ibuprofen around the clock for a little bit longer. I really couldn't write or type for more than like 5, 10 minutes at that point. I ended up failing all of my finals because I couldn't finish them because they were so long and they were writing, and I didn't know about accommodations at the time. Like I didn't connect that was something that I could like ask for help with.
Right, right.
Um, but about a week before I left for the summer, I went and I saw a rheumatologist at like near my school, and then she's like, "You have some kind of inflammatory arthritis. I don't know if it might just go away on its own. Let's try and do NSAIDs for another month." I did NSAIDs, didn't get better. Started me on Plaquenil, and then that kind of started the whole arthritis journey. It wasn't until this summer actually where I had the finger involvement, the knee involvement, and then I ended up having feet involvement over the last couple of years. But this summer, I got COVID, and then my back started really hurting, my lower back, and that plus my family history. And then I did an X-ray of my lower back. I guess that makes more sense, which showed a little bit of joint damage. So that plus I have some family history of psoriasis that kind of put me in this diagnostic bubble like 3 years later.
Yeah, well, and just for people listening as like a teachable moment, psoriatic arthritis can present with either like distal symptoms like the fingers, like the distal means like furthest away from the core of your body, so like fingers and toes. But the other spondyloarthropathies, well, sorry, like axial spondyloarthritis or ankylosing spondylitis or non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis present in the spine and pelvis. Um, but psoriatic arthritis can present either with spine or distal involvement or both. So, so it is very hard. This is why I'm glad I'm not a rheumatologist in charge of diagnosing these, because but it's often this little detective process of like knowing or paying attention to where the inflammation is taking place, and then looking at the imaging and seeing what kind, like whether it's the tendons versus like inside the joint. But long story short, so you've had this kind of preliminary diagnosis of inflammatory arthritis, and then like kind of basically some combo of psoriatic arthritis for like 3 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And what kind of, I know you mentioned treatments for the palatal monoclonus. What about your treatment journey, kind of highlights and lowlights? And that's always a frequently asked question for the newly diagnosed people.
So I was on just Plaquenil for like 6 months, and that kind of worked, but not really. Then I added methotrexate, which worked really, really well. And then it just made me so nauseous. But I stuck with it for a very long time. I've only just stopped it. I was on that for like a year and a half, 2 years. I don't even know. And then I ended up going on an archaeological dig a year ago, and I flared super badly while abroad. Um, so I was on steroids for a while. I'm back on steroids for a while again. This thought seems to be a recurring theme, prednisone for my fall semester, but it's okay. But basically that flare, I ended up starting a biologic. I tried Humira, didn't work at all. Tried Enbrel, worked super well until it didn't. And now I'm on Cosentyx and sulfasalazine and hydroxychloroquine, which I just added. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so this is a, your experience is an example of how a treatment is not always straightforward, right? As much as we would like there to be just one clear best treatment, it's often an iterative trial and error process. I want to, I want to talk about your experience on methotrexate, if you're okay with that, because I feel like I want to counterbalance my own story, because I often just tell people about the fact that I have been on methotrexate for over 20 years, except for pregnancy and postpartum, and I don't have any side effects of methotrexate, like fatigue or nausea often. I very occasionally will get fatigued the day after, but long story short, I share that story because it seems like there's a lot of people online who talk about the side effects, and sometimes I'll say, just remember, like not everyone has these side effects. But I realized it's like a window into my thought process that maybe I don't ever want to come across as minimizing the reality of these side effects. And I think doctors don't know why some people have these side effects. Ironically for me, every other medicine that has nausea listed as a side effect, I will experience that. For some reason, I just don't on methotrexate. No, and also don't experience hair loss. I have so much hair. Even my hairdresser's like, your hair is so thick. And people are like, how come your hair doesn't fall out? I don't know. I'm a freak. But anyway, so back to you. What, what not only it's like, can you paint a little picture if you would like to walk down like terrible memory lane? I'm sorry to make you do this, of what your body felt like after you took methotrexate, just for educational purposes and also validation purposes to people experiencing the same. And then I want to talk about your thought process and how you came to the conclusion that it was time to kind of break up with methotrexate, because I think that's a really hard decision, just like a breakup with a relationship.
Mhm. So it was definitely hard because methotrexate worked really well for me. It's not that it didn't. It was like my joints would always feel the best the day after I ate the methotrexate. I took the methotrexate. I don't even know. But
Yeah.
I was on the pill form of methotrexate for I think 8 months, maybe a year. I don't know times. Um, and I was so nauseous the day after, I could not be around food. Like I lived with my roommates and they needed to pre-warn me that they were cooking in the kitchen because otherwise I would just be like gagging. Like it was just so nauseous. I wouldn't eat at all. And then I would be like, fine. I was like, oh, if I just don't eat, I don't have to go out. And then I switched to injections after a couple of months because I finally built up the courage to say to my rheumatologist, like, hey, am I supposed to be so nauseous that I can't eat the day after? And they're like, no. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but it said nausea. How was I supposed to know? Because there was a level of nausea which was acceptable.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I'm one of those people who needs to be told something explicitly, and sometimes I don't come to the conclusion on my own, like, oh, I don't have to do this. I don't know. I was that
Well,
kid who got my,
oh, no, go on, go
no,
on.
go ahead. I was
No,
that
no.
kid who got my braces off like 2 years early because they're like, wow, we didn't expect you to follow the instructions so exactly. And I'm like, but you told me to do this, so I'm doing it.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, and it falls under the umbrella, like I often say, it's such a cruel irony that so many people with chronic invisible conditions, especially inflammatory arthritis, they are accused of faking or exaggerating their symptoms when really the majority of people I encounter with these conditions are vastly underreporting their pain and underreporting, meaning not telling people and not making a big deal about how much pain or suffering that they have. So your example is a perfect one of that. Like you're not even bringing it up to your doctor because you just said, well, it says on the side effect list that nausea could be a side effect. So I guess this is what the trade-off I have to make, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah. So you switch to, because a lot of studies do show that injectable methotrexate is associated with much less likelihood of nausea and GI upset than the oral pills.
Hmm. Yeah. So I switched to the injectable, which worked pretty, like, I didn't have a lot of side effects for, I would say, the first couple of months of taking it. I'm like, life is good. Everything's wonderful. I just take it easy the one day. I used to do my methotrexate on a Friday night, so then I would have Saturday, and then I ended up switching. So that way I would do it on a Thursday night and have Friday, because I didn't have classes on a Friday, and then I could still have a weekend with my friends. Like that was just something that was important to my mental health to be able to have a weekend. But eventually it got to a point where I was still nauseous, not enough that like I could be around food and I could maybe eat a piece of toast, but like I was also quite dizzy. And then I was like, if I have a meeting or something, I can't go because I'm like dizzy. And so it's like being nauseous and dizzy and just having a whole day of the week where I was just totally down for the count. It just wasn't worth it in my lifestyle anymore. I guess because I was also actively flaring for like months at this point. And so I was like, it's not like this is preventing me from flaring right now. Like I can try something else.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about like the Room to Thrive, support group or the alumni group
later, but that is something that, that is discussed often in the group is like, when is it, thinking, helping each other think through, like really what you're having to do is perform like a cost benefit analysis, right? Of
Hmm.
methotrexate. And when you're on multiple meds and you have multiple conditions, you can't, it's very hard, right? Because you can't completely separate out the variables, right? But I think your point was extremely well taken that like methotrexate isn't the sole driver of controlling your flares because you're still flaring on methotrexate, and there are other medications to try. So you
Hmm.
tell me about what it was like when you told the doctor that you wanted to maybe break up with methotrexate.
She was like, "Oh, that makes perfect sense." It was like a no-brainer thing. She's like, "Oh," like I messaged her this long message explaining all of my reasons, and it was like I feel bad for the my chart soliloquy that happened there. And then she's like, "Oh, let's do a virtual visit this week so I could switch you to something else." And then we did it, and then I switched, and it was not a big deal. And I was like, "Wow, I was expecting you to like fight me for this or something." I don't know.
Yeah, and that's so I love this example because so often we gear ourselves up for things to be a fight, right? And sometimes they are, but in your case it's like a great example of, you don't know how your doctor's going to respond until you ask. So I think if for people listening, I'm always thinking like what are the main like what are going to be the takeaways from this episode, right? And one of them is, it's okay if you're having a lot of side effects on a medication, or even you're just feeling bad and you're not sure, is it the medication? Is it something else? It's always good to bring that up to you. It's okay to bring that up to your doctor. You don't have to tough it out. And I'm very similar to you. I've had to have that same conversation, or my doctor's had to have that conversation with me, you know? Um, and it reminds me of that meme where it's like, one guy looks at the other guy and goes, "How much pain are you in?" And he's like, "Oh, just the normal amount." And then another guy goes, "The normal amount is zero." And the first guy who goes, looks like, "What?" Like, whoa, I never thought of that. Like that's not possible to be in zero, right? So it's hard
Mhm.
to know what normal is, right?
Yeah, I had said the normal amount of pain to a medical assistant once when they asked walking in, and they're like, "What does that mean?" And I'm like, "I don't know, the normal amount."
Yeah, yeah. It's really hard to put pain into words.
Mhm.
But you mentioned a little bit about how this was affecting you, mentally, like you were saying with the methotrexate side effects, how you were having to choose, to not have your side effects on the weekend so that you could still have a weekend, which was important for your mental health. You know, um, Being a young person, being in college and managing these conditions is such a unique experience. Like what helped you? What else helped you cope during that time?
So a couple of things. One being room to thrive, because like I, no one had ever told me explicitly that this was a chronic condition. Like
Mm.
up until like I was like a year in, and I was still waiting for like the magic pill that was going to make me all better. And having the group, like, I wasn't even going to do the group originally, but I'm like, oh, I follow this lady on Instagram. She seems nice. Let me try it. And then it was like, honestly, like the biggest game changer for my emotional well-being to be like empowered. Um, and then like to know what was happening and have all the details. And then also having people that I could talk about things with. Because like I'm in my early 20s. I don't know what I'm doing with anything in life. Usually I can like call my mom and ask her how to like fix my dishwasher. But like you can't do that with chronic illness. Like, but now you can because you have like a group of people.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great analogy. Yeah, like having access to, and I think a small group is nice because I think sometimes if, like, I don't know, when I join those big, huge Facebook groups, it's like for
Hmm.
me sometimes too many voices. Like I can't take it all in. Like it's so nice to have like a small, manageable number. That's just my personal opinion. But and yeah, multi-generational group. I so agree with you that like having people in different stages of life,
Hmm.
to share wisdom. I mean, when we talk about in the groups, talk about dating, talk about family, friendships, jobs, accommodations, and stuff like that. So I'm really glad. I didn't realize that you weren't sure about the group at first, that you were thinking you were going to maybe just do the self-paced, which the self-paced is great. But
Hmm.
I'm glad that you joined the group as well.
Yeah, it was like honestly like the biggest thing for me, like emotional well-being wise. It was like crazy. Um, and then in terms of like general life coping, I think school and accommodations was a big thing. I have
Mm.
a whole laundry list of accommodations, and I literally would not still be in college without them.
Yeah, how did you learn about accommodations?
Okay, so I had had non-formal accommodations in high school for the palatal myoclonus that like I could wear headphones when I was taking the test and listen to music. And that was like I went to a Catholic school, so like 504 plans weren't really a thing. And so it was like very unclear. And then I went to college and I was like, should I ask for accommodations? How do I do that? And then I ended up finding the disability services office. And then I just had a conversation with them, like, these are all my issues. And then they're like, okay, go to your doctor, get documentation, and then I'll put all these things in your chart and you can get all these accommodations. So it was definitely like a learning process on my own because like I realized like later on I realized that you can just ask for more accommodations later on if you need them. Like this is a very silly example that really changed my quality of life. So I have the lower back involvement and then also I have the knee involvement. So like being able to change positions in class is really important to me. Like just to reduce pain and stiffness. Um, I asked for a nice office chair in all my classes instead of the little tiny desks, which is not something that they thought to bring up to me, but I'm like, can I get a different kind of chair? And that was just like the easiest thing that now I'm not in pain at the end of an hour lecture because I could like move around and change position.
That's so great. And I just want to define what accommodations mean in this context. So accommodations in the United States, it's part of Americans with Disabilities Act. And then talking about educational environments, it's the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, which say that, people have the right, well, IDEA states people have the right to a free and appropriate public education with reasonable accommodations. That's like the law language.
Mhm.
So now the devil in the details is who gets to define what is a reasonable accommodation, but the classic case is like someone with ADHD gets extra time on a test to accommodate for that, or someone who uses a wheelchair for mobility gets a ramp so that they can physically access the school. Um, and the ADA, it's part of all these disability laws that are meant to give you access to physical and educational environments, right, in the United States. And so you have the right. Every college and every university that has any public funding, as far as I understand, has a like office of like disability services or some entity in the college or school that is in charge of ensuring that it is takes these people's like to people disabled people will say that this is my condition, this is the accommodations I need, and then the college works with you to determine, yes, these are reasonable. Like the chair gives you access to your education because without the chair you're in a lot of pain, and that interferes with your ability to learn. So you just anyone listening know that you have the right. It doesn't have to just be like a something as obvious as like a wheelchair user, right? I think a lot of people think, well, I'm not really disabled because I have arthritis, but I can like walk and stuff. But no, it's disability is this gigantic spectrum, right? Like another common accommodation, I'm not sure if you've used this one, is like using speech to text or voice dictation software so you don't have to handwrite. Handwriting is really hard when your hands hurt. Not,
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And despite the fact that it's the year 2024, a lot of colleges and high schools and still do a lot of stuff um, with pencil paper. So, I think it's really important that you identified accommodations as a coping tool. Because I was thinking more like when I asked the question in my head, I was thinking more like mental coping tools, like mindfulness or something. But you're right that having those accommodations, I'm guessing it eliminated some stress from your life, right?
Yeah, like one accommodation that I have is, well, they kind of go together. I have flexible attendance and extensions on out of class assignments. So if
Mm.
I'm flaring and I'm having a rough week, I can email my professor and get an extension or or like an excused absence, and it has the same weight as like a doctor's note because I've done that previous documentation. So then my professor
Wow.
can't get into a whole arguing battle. Do you really need it? And I don't need to like tell them my whole life story in order to get an extension. And it just gives me the flexibility that if I'm having a bad day, I can just rest and focus on like recovering and doing what I need to do to like cope, like heating pad, just chill out, taking a little stretch, and not worry about being in class.
Yeah. Oh, flexible attendance is so huge. And it's like there's a lot of corollaries, I think is the right word for accommodations on the job. Now, jobs tend to be, just my experience, just off the top of my head, jobs are often a little more difficult to get the accommodations for, depending on the employer, than schools. Things, flexible attendance, being able to, reschedule meetings without some sort of like demerit or something. And,
Mhm.
yeah, and having access to those ergonomic tools is huge. Any other accommodations you wanted to highlight for maybe some other college students listening, or maybe college professors listening?
Don't be afraid to ask for everything. Is what I'm going to say. If it's not appropriate, they will say no. But
Hmm.
sometimes if you don't ask, they won't bring it up. Like I have the ability for exams, I can dictate exams.
Mm.
So I can voice to speech them. I can take breaks during the exams. I have a little bit of extra time in exams just to account for the fact that I can take a break or dictate. Um, I have responsive transport, which is basically means I have an app and I can get a car, pick me up from my apartment, and take me directly to the door of all of my classes. So like
Wow.
if it's like a really snowy day out and I'm like my joints are just not feeling this whole walking thing, I can still go to class.
That's so cool. I hadn't heard of that as accommodation, but it makes perfect sense. I'm imagining my college campus, which there weren't roads to all the buildings, but there were little sidewalks, and there's the like maintenance people were always in like the little golf carts
Mhm.
driving around, or they're kind of little electronic cars. So I think they would probably end up using that. I don't know about
Mhm.
your school. Um, do they use those little golf carts? This is just a silly question.
My school doesn't, but I know a
Okay.
lot of schools that do. I guess because all of the buildings are like accessible from the back entrance by the
Mm,
road. So it's just they used to have where they would actually drive onto the like quad
yeah,
and like
yeah.
in like these minivans, but then they stopped doing
Oh.
that.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah. The school I went to undergrad is like founded in like 1860s, so it's like very old, and they did not think of accommodations remotely when they designed anything there. Um, but that's a story for another day. So this is really great. So did you have this is a common thing people bring up in the support groups is fear around asking for the accommodations and just feeling emotional. Emotions are okay, but feeling negative emotions around and fear around that process. What was your experience like?
I was super like I guess I was nervous that they were going to be like because of my past experiences with the palatal myoclonus diagnosis, I kind of assumed that they were going to like call me a liar and not give me anything. Which was not the case. They were actually like really good, I will say, with accommodations. When you talk to your doctor to get documentation, sometimes you have to be really specific about what kind of accommodations you want, and you have to do
Yes.
pre-research and ask your doctor to specifically write those accommodations in the letter. Because sometimes, like especially with, I went straight to adult rheumatological care, and I guess they weren't really experienced with accommodations in an academic
Hmm.
sense. So I kind of had to tell them what I wanted. I also had my primary, my pediatrician, who I still see. I will see until she kicks me out because I love her.
Yeah.
I had her do a lot of my documentation because we could just have a conversation because she had access to all those records. So being really specific was important, and I had to do a lot of the first work. But most of the time, they're very nice. I mean, I've taken classes as like a visiting student, and they've not been super supportive, but that's when you just
Hmm.
have to be specific.
Are there any like websites that help you? Like, for example, Ask Jan, and I'm going to put this in the chat, the Job Accommodations Network. It has a great bank of possible job accommodations. And you can look it up by either symptom or diagnosis. So that's a website I often recommend to people for job accommodations. Did you use any like resources that you remember for school
I
accommodations?
remember the Arthritis Foundation has a lot of resources for like kids with JIA who are transitioning to college,
Yeah, yeah.
which I didn't have a JIA diagnosis. I didn't get diagnosed until I was 19, but it was
Mhm.
still pretty applicable to me. And so I kind of pulled from that to ask for things.
Okay, yeah, I see this. Know your workplace rights, know your testing and accommodations right. Okay, I'll put some of these in college access and success from the Arthritis Foundation. I will definitely put those some links in the show notes. I'm just always trying to give people more resources, and you don't always have to have a formal process where you have like these job or work accommodation, yeah, job or school accommodations can be something that's um, formally documented and approved through your school. That's the way to make sure that you get it. But you also like I've had jobs where I just kind of, especially really small employers, like when I worked for a small outpatient OT clinic, you just can kind of like talk to your coworkers and be like, hey, can you help me with like this thing? Like there was this one thing when my joints were flaring postpartum where I was in a pediatric clinic and we had these swings and we had to pinch this, what are those things called? Like hooks that are like carabiner hooks and to get the swing up to the ceiling. And I had a really hard time pinching it. And so I would just ask for a hand from anyone in the room and if it was safe, obviously, for them with the kids that they were watching. And I didn't have to like document that anywhere. It just was, something that they just knew my thumb was sore and I needed a little help with that. So just know it doesn't always have to be like a documented thing, but if you want to, but it's better to document it and not need it documented than to not document in the first place. So I hope that your experience and your tips, like thank you for giving people these tips because again, it's something that a lot of people either don't realize that they have the legal right to, or they're scared, or they gaslight themselves because they think it's not that bad. Like,
I definitely was like, oh, it's not that bad. But then I was like, I guess what's the harm in asking? Like they'll say no if
yeah,
it's not appropriate.
yeah,
Um,
that's a
and
great
or like, yeah.
outlook. That's a
So
great
like
outlook.
just
Sorry.
ask.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a good outlook for a lot of things in life, I think, actually, you
Mhm.
know. Um, Is there anything else coping wise, like any, specific, like I think about acceptance and commitment therapy for me and like reading The Happiness Trap and going to therapy, like those were kind of like my, some of my highlights for what helps me cope on a daily basis, friend and family support, obviously the support groups too. Anything else just while we're on the topic of accommodations and also coping.
I have like awesome family and friends that support me. I have my parents are great. My mom has driven the 8 hours to my college campus every time I start a new medicine,
Oh
so that
my
way she can just be next to me. Um,
That's
it's
so
quite funny.
sweet.
Every
That's
time I start a new medicine, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and she'll be like staring at me, making sure I'm okay.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I know, she's wonderful. Um, and then my roommates are, I have three roommates and they are awesome. Like, especially with like being on like immunosuppressive medication and not getting sick. They have what they've playfully called the Don't Kill Gabby plan, where they'll be like, I woke up with a slight sore throat this morning, already COVID tested negative. We'll be wearing a mask in the kitchen. And I'll be like, cool. And so they've always just been, I think, having people in your life, people are usually very nice if you are direct and explain things well, then generally people will be nice and reciprocal. But yeah, I have great family support, and I have great friend support. Even though I wouldn't say they get chronic illness 100% of the time, or get like arthritis specifically, because I it's not like I have anyone close to me in my life who has like autoimmune arthritis, but like they were just always really willing to like listen and respond appropriately. I don't know.
That's amazing. And are these people that you sought out or were you randomly assigned to them as your roommates?
They were honestly, I was close friends with one of them, and then two of them were friends of a friend, and so we kind of just all grouped together.
Okay.
Sophomore year, we got all grouped together, so I only knew one of them
Wow.
well, like initially, and then the other two just jumped in.
That's amazing. That's amazing. One more question before we get to the rapid fire questions, which is going by, it's going by so fast. But you've already painted a picture in many ways of like what a day in your life is like. That's one of my favorite questions, actually. I don't always ask it. What's a day in your life like in terms of like, are there things that you do? What are the things that you might do to manage your condition? Like, putting on compression gloves if the fingers are hurting, or a heating pad, or anything you want to share about kind of like your day in the life.
I would say setting up my day for success. Like I'm in college, so my schedule is flexible. I do better with a slow morning. Just like having time, especially since like morning stiffness can be kind of long, to just like have time to slowly wake up in the morning. So I do my classes. My classes I usually schedule more in the afternoon. Um, I've kind of set up my environment, like my apartment. So like I have like pump bottles on my shampoo and conditioner, like little things like that. I like e-chopper, um, just so that things are easier for me. Um, I sleep with compression gloves on, which I like, and I have like thumb braces that I sleep with that my occupational therapist gave me. I call them like thumb jail because like with the compression gloves plus the little thumb, I'm like my hands are like in jail when I go to bed, but it's good and just honestly taking things at my own pace and knowing that I'm not building my time and my schedule so that I'm not in a rush. And like I
Mm. What's
structure
that
my
like? I need to learn from you.
yeah, I like to structure my assignments where I put them in my planner to be due earlier and so I can have the I don't feel well, I'm not doing this today conversion factor and still
Hmm.
just be ahead of everything.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's definitely a chronic illness pro tip is getting things done, attempting to get things done in advance so that you don't have that pressure in the last minute, especially because you don't know how you're going to be feeling at the last minute.
Mhm.
So I love that. Um, One of my other favorite questions to ask is what are your best words of wisdom or advice for newly diagnosed patients?
I guess I would say seek out resources and research on your own because, like, with my whole rare disorder, I ended up doing research and figuring out my diagnosis and then going to a doctor who could confirm it. And, like, with arthritis, like, if I didn't have outside support resources like the group, I would have been like so lost, like, no clue what's going on. Um, Doctors will not tell you everything explicitly. Like, I didn't even get a pamphlet, and I'm a very, like, data driven person. And so I guess don't go down Google rabbit holes. And I guess it's like who you are as a person. If you're more like an anxious Googler, maybe that's not the words of advice for you. But for me, I find that knowledge is power and knowledge is very reassuring. Um, and so don't be afraid to do research from like reputable sources that are not going to like, don't go on like WebMD and like Google everything.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Great. Know that, especially with a chronic illness, you're the one living with it 24/7. So it's completely appropriate to become as well informed as you can about your condition and just check your sources. I mean, actually, strangely enough, I will say a quick plug for WebMD, but I actually think that they do pretty good fact checking. I know they got a bad rep initially, but they're most of their posts I see nowadays are like medically reviewed and everything. But it's more the wellness industrial complex that I think gets people into a bit of a um, dark or dangerous place that is extremely dangerous because it doesn't seem dangerous. It seems very nice.
Mhm.
So that's just my 2 cents. But anyway, I asked you your advice, so that's your advice. Do you have a favorite like mantra or inspirational saying, something that you repeat to yourself on tough days?
I guess something for my journey is like I've failed a lot of things. Like I failed classes, I've had to change majors and like do all these different things differently academically because of arthritis. And I'm also a huge Star Trek fan. So
Yeah.
like there's this Captain Picard quote that I love. Like it's possible to commit no errors and still lose. That's not weakness, that's life. And so just understanding that sometimes you could be doing everything right. You could take all the meds and exercise and drink all the water, and it's still not your fault. And you might
Yes.
have to do things differently. And that's okay.
Well, I am totally gonna use that quote. I hadn't heard it before. The one that I quote a lot is about from from Star Trek. It's do not mistake composure with ease. Because I saw someone did a meme where it was like, you have anxiety. I never would have thought you have anxiety. You seem so, you seem so positive or whatever. And it's like, do not mistake composure with ease. I just love that. But that's not like an inspirational saying. That's just like a saying that I say. Do you have a favorite arthritis? We already mentioned a bunch of tools, but do you have a favorite arthritis related gadget or tool in your toolbox?
I'm like thinking of like physical tools. I'm a big heating pad girly. And
Yes.
I love my compression gloves. I love compression gloves in get cute compression gloves that match your outfits. I like
Yeah.
buy the Grace Enable ones and I have them in all the
Yes.
colors so then I can like match to my outfit. Although I'm a big green person and there's nothing in green yet. So I'm still on
Oh,
the hunt for a
you
cute
can
green
tell
compression
Sarah.
glove.
I know her. She's been on the podcast twice, actually. She was my very first. Did
Hmm.
you know she's my very first guest, the founder of Grace and
Oh,
Abel?
really?
And if you
Oh,
listen to
wow.
episode 1 of the Arthritis Life podcast, Grace and Abel was just an idea at that time. That was 2019. And same with, Arthritis Life. I just started it as like a YouTube channel. I didn't even know it was going to become like, bigger and have like room to thrive and programs and stuff like that. So it's really neat. And then we just did a catch up. So I'll put links to those. Sorry, I just got excited because I love Sarah
Hmm.
and I love Grace and Abel. So yeah, those are she, as a patient, formed this company along with, she co-founded it with a hand therapist, an occupational therapist, because she was like, why are all these compression gloves ugly and uncomfortable? Like, what is going on
Hmm.
here? So of course it took a patient, right, to design a better one. So anyway, but I'm not really 100% biased because I already knew her through Arthritis Foundation, a flashback to Arthritis Foundation or callback through volunteering with them. So anyway, so compression gloves, cute ones, matching your outfits. Perfect.
Hmm.
You can even bedazzle them. I have my bedazzled ones from the Taylor Swift concert that I still wear to like other events now.
Hmm.
Although once you bedazzle them, you can't wash them. Okay. Do you have a favorite book, movie, or show that you've watched slash read recently?
I don't know. I've been reading, I'm a big Star Trek fan, so my new thing now is I've watched all the Star Trek series like a bajillion times. And now I'm trying to read through the novels because there's like hundreds of the novels.
I
And
didn't
so I
know
think
that.
that's what yeah, like the Star Trek universe is ever expanding. You need something to get into. You have a lot of free time. Just watch Star Trek and read all the books. So I don't know. I guess that.
Okay, Star Trek, definitely. I'm putting that on. I have Star Trek settler themed the Settlers of Catan. That's as much as I get. Okay, what is it? This is like kind of the $100,000 question that this entire podcast is trying to answer. So it's a hard one. But what does it mean to you to live a good life and thrive with inflammatory arthritis?
I guess to me, it means knowing that everything's not going to be perfect all the time. And it's not like I'm going to be pain-free and have no fatigue all the time, but just doing the things I want to and figuring out the tools I need to, and just having like my coping and my support, like my family, my friends, like my faith is very important to me. And just like
Mhm.
using all of that together to just kind of live with it. Like it's part of me. It's not all of me. Um, and like, I don't know, just vibing.
Yeah. I mean, you're so chill. I just love it. I love it. Oh, yeah, and yeah, like I love that. It's living alongside it, living in what would you call it? I keep wanting to say the word peace, but it's not even that. Living in harmony, that's the word, with your condition versus fighting it. I think that's a very healthy healthy outlook. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience? This is your this is your platform. I'm joking to myself. This is your soapbox. Anything else you want to share or with the universe? You totally don't have to. I just
I love group. Group was like the biggest thing in terms of education and support for me. And I love the graduates group. I look forward to it every week. It's funny because my roommates are like, "Are you going to hang out with your arthritis friends?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am."
I love it. Yeah. Oh, yes. And I need to do a better job of explaining. Yes. So there's the initial smaller cohorts of the Room to Thrive groups that are like anywhere from 8 to 14 people, usually like around 8 to 10. And that they go, you go through the program over the course of like 3, 4 months. And then if you want to keep connecting, because a lot of times people are like, wait, I want to still, like, now I love these meetings and I want to see these people. There's an alumni group that meets also every week. And that's not as much of an educational support group in the sense we don't have like predetermined topics of the week. And it doesn't have like the course material is along with it. It's just pure, like you mentioned, friendship. And I'm still facilitating that, or we have guest facilitators. But and we do sometimes talk about, right? We talk about like questions people have, updates, and it's also, yeah, a lot of bonding. And you've been there a little while, and it's some of the people there have been there since 2021, now, so that's like 3 years. So it really is, sorry, I'm talking more about it, but it's really a chance to form like longer lasting, bonds and friendships. What are some of your favorite things about the group?
I don't know. I feel like I have a bunch of, I think I'm the baby of the group right now, the graduates
Yeah,
group.
I think so.
Um, I feel like I have a bunch of like aunts and like I have like chronic illness aunts and I can just like ask things and be like have like humans who like get it and like just
Yeah.
talk and like I look forward to hearing about everyone's week. I'm like, oh, what's happening in their life? I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, oh, they had this appointment this week. Like, I wonder how that went. Like, just throughout my week and just having that group.
Yeah. Yeah, this is gonna sound like a really strange analogy, but it just occurred to me that like my mom once said she got a housekeeper for the first time and she was like, what I realized it's every other week. And it's not just the fact that they come every other week, it's that throughout those 2 weeks, you're not as stressed about the state of the house because you know that there's going to be this appointment where things are going to get cleaned up. And I kind of feel like, not in the same exact way, but the group is more like you have this thing that you're looking forward to each week that is same with therapy, right? But where you're like, okay, this is where, if something's stressing me out, this is where I can bring that. Or if this is a major win, like in your case, you shared in the group, that about the methotrexate, which you just shared to the podcast too, right? And it's like everyone was like celebrating with you. Okay, like you made the decision to break up with methotrexate. We're celebrating you, and people celebrate all their major life events too. Like graduating college, um, you know, going on a trip. Like we just celebrate those things. So yeah, thank you for sharing about that. Yeah, it is really, I just want people to know about it. I still don't know like the best way to get the word out. You know what I mean? I use social media and the podcast, and videos to just make sure people know because I think it is obviously I'm biased, but I think it's a pretty special experience. So thank you for being part of it because a group is only as strong as the members, right? So it seems to attract some pretty wise, pretty cool people. So if you are listening and interested, the show notes always have like links to the pages that will tell you like when the next groups are starting. Because right now I start the cohorts twice a year, and then the alumni group runs continuously. So thank you so much for sharing that. And then where can people find you online if you are amenable to people finding you online?
I'm not super active on social media, but you are more than welcome to follow me on my Instagram, Gabby Grace Vaccaro. It's my name. It's not hard, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yay. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much again. And this conversation for those of you listening on the audio format, this will be also on YouTube, on the Arthritis Life YouTube channel, and detailed show notes and a transcription are always found on my website for each episode on the episode page at arthritis.theenthusiasticlife.com. So thank you so much, Gabby. Seriously, this is so great. I hope people find this story, comforting and relatable and also informative as to especially the college accommodation process. So have a great day. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Arthritis Life podcast. This episode is brought to you by Room to Thrive, an educational program I created from scratch to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks. You can go through the pre-recorded course on your own, or you can take the course along with a support group. Learn more at the link in my show notes, or you can always go to www.myarthritislife.net. And if you like this podcast, I would be so honored if you took the time to rate and review it. I also encourage you to share it with anyone you know who might benefit from it. I also wanted to remind you that you can find full transcripts, videos, and detailed show notes with hyperlinks for each episode on my website, www.myarthritislife.net. If you have any ideas for future episodes, or if you want to share your story or wisdom on the podcast, just shoot me an email at info@myarthritislife.net. I can't wait to hear from you.